Hey, what's up you guys? So today's video is going to be about the problem that I personally faced a couple of weeks ago. We had a reservation with one of the websites called Airbnb. If you don't know and you are new to the channel, I'm a realtor, and what I do is I rent places and I do property management. Pretty much I go and rent a place, say for one lease, and then I place there my own clients. This is pretty much longer stays. Most of the time they're like 2, 3, 4, 5 months. My main clientele are people who are out of state. It might be people whose house was damaged, they needed temporary housing. Might be people who are traveling nurses. Might be people who are construction employees. For instance, if you hire an employee in Texas, they're paid much less than if you would hire a guy in California. Sometimes it can be 2 times a difference. What people do, especially in construction, they hire people out of state and they bring them to California, and then obviously they need to be housed. This type of cases, I help people. I started as a student housing company. I don't do that anymore that much. One of the platforms where I advertise was and sometimes is Airbnb, besides others like Booking.com, Facebook, Craigslist, Yelp, Google Maps. By the way, I took out from Yelp, and I will make a separate video about the Yelp. And if you don't know the story of Airbnb, it's a San Francisco based company. Pretty much it was created by 2 friends, Joe Gebbia and Brian Chesky. The main idea was to rent a spare space, spare airbed, actually that's where the name is coming from, and pretty much make money on that. Now they got to the startup accelerator called Y Combinator. By the way, I was there myself. I had a training in the Y Combinator, and back in the day when they were just starting, it still is, I would say, the best startup incubator that exists nowadays. Now back in the day it was really hard to get there, and I remember there was an interview by one of the founders. He asked them like what's an idea is, and they were like, we rent a spare space to the stranger, and he was like, these guys are crazy, it's like, who would use that? But apparently they pivoted a lot from the starter, and what it turned to, it has a super friendly user interface, and I think that was main factor played. And obviously when you get like investors from Y Combinators, people know each other in Silicon Valley, they advertise you to the better marketers. It was going just high from the time it started. Now recently the company got public. They have their stocks listed in stock market, and that's changed a lot. So when you get public, you have to have all board members taking a part when you're making decisions, and you cannot just like make decisions like this. Now there were lots of things that the company went through, especially after COVID. What happened is they had to pivot a lot from a lot of things. They were going into the experience and lots of other stuff. Personally, I think that was really unnecessary, and I believe that the founders understood it. They pretty much backed up from that. The most important thing in this type of businesses is being customer oriented. Now Airbnb is really guest oriented. However, the problem is with the customer service representative they're hiring. And I actually spoke to Airbnb founders, Brian Chesky's assistant, I believe, or chief of staff. She's on the Instagram, the girl from Belarus. She told me that they know about it. They know that there was a struggle with customer service. There is still a struggle. Now they brought a lady, Catherine Powell, I believe, from Disney, who would be handling the operations with customer service, but it didn't really, it's just going down. I know lots of people who are quitting the working with this company because of low level of customer service. Now you have to understand that most of the guys who work in this type of customer service companies, they are really underpaid. Most of the time it's companies from Philippines or India, some Central American countries. The problem is that since the guys are underpaid, and they are not just underpaid, they are heavily underpaid. Just so you guys know, from what I hear, some of them are being paid $1, $2, $3 a day. And this is a recent thing, like you can call them and you can hear the rooster or call on the background. I mean, I don't have nothing against having animals, but come on, like you have to work in an office environment at least. Now what happens is, because they're underpaid, they don't really care. They have to either work in couple works or take the work seriously, and sometimes it can cause a significant damage, as it caused to us. We had $11,000 taken from our account. What happened, we had a guest. It was a relocation company that we were working through Airbnb, and they booked one of our places. It was $11,000 stay, And what happened after 2 months, they were in and out. Most of the time they were not staying, but the property was occupied and the reservation was made. They just got refunded. Now, I understand there are still people who are highly qualified, highly paid, sometimes people who got their education degree in the United States. The rents in Philippines or in India, they are significantly different from what we have in California. Even in Midwest, they are different from what we have in California. Like, there is no property that, I mean, I'm talking about the average properties. I'm not always talking about luxury stays or anything like that. That would cost maybe $20,000 a night. But in California, we have those properties. And when you let the people who have no idea about the pricing here handle the cases that are making decisions on people's life here, it's just a disaster. Now imagine I run about a portfolio of 40 properties. It doesn't really cause us a big damage, although $11,000 is a significant amount for our company. We have 5-6 employees, thanks God it's not much. And what happens is I can somehow balance. I mean, I would probably not have income for this month, but I can somehow balance everything and get out of this situation. And those are most of the guys who have 1, 2, 3 properties, beginner investors or people just with one property. And imagine like they would just get their $11,000 of refund. It would be a huge disaster. They would not be able to pay their mortgage or pay the salary to whomever they're paying salaries. There is no pretty much way to get this to the top of the decision makers in that company. Now, it used to be when the company wasn't public, you could just go to Brian Chesky's Twitter and hey, I have this problem, and someone would follow up or he would be following up. He, since I want to say probably 4 or 5 years, he stopped following up with people because obviously like 1 billion people over that platform and just physically impossible. Now they hired Catherine Powell. He was trying to follow up with people, but again, it's just a big significant chunk of people who are having constantly these problems. And the worst part is sometimes how I found it out about that issue. We used to be getting a payouts like sometimes from month to month, from week to week. The payout stopped, so I was just, wait a minute, something is wrong. I went to the system and I thought that there was a refund for $11,000. The worst part is that we weren't even being told about that. Now, normally the Airbnb policy is stating that what's happening to the property owner should be told to the property owner before the process will be started. And this was an exception. I don't know who was handling this case, but it wasn't just one-sided stuff. The other issue that Airbnb is facing is that they're getting a very serious competition from VRBO in the face of Expedia. If you don't know, it's a huge conglomerate. They own pretty much lots of companies in the hospitality industry. And they came up recently with the rewards program, which I think Airbnb do way long ago. Since the beginning, it was kind of being discussed, but they never came up with a real reward program. The reward program on VRBO is called 1K Rewards. Now, I'm not a bigger reward guy, but there are people I know that focused on this kind of stuff. So I think that Expedia is a little more economically backed up because it's been way longer in the market. They spend much more on advertising. If you would go to the websites like SimilarWeb or track their data, you would see that they just have much more money spent on advertising, which pretty much takes a big chunk of market from Airbnb. There's also another player called Booking.com and Furnished Finder. By the way, I would make a video about Furnished Finder that serves pretty much mostly traveling nurses and people who need temporary housing. Those ones are not really heavy. Booking.com is very strong in Europe. They're trying to enter the United States market, or they were not really successful. They have their own issues. Now, main issue with VRBO or Expedia is that they can just have credit card chargeback and you would not be able to do anything. Now, I was advised to get signatures from people who are going to be staying with us, stating that they will not file a chargeback. But since you are not the party who are negotiating with credit card companies, that doesn't really help. And of course, one of the main problems is that cities one by one are banning Airbnb or short-term rentals, like Dallas, Irvine. These are major cities like LA, New York has banned Airbnb, almost every big city banned, and they are kind of trying to fight it, but they're not really successful. The problem is that Airbnb has hard time letting people know that they should be monitoring people who are staying in their properties. Now, I had a couple of people who were actually under FBI warrant. Fortunately, the responsibility was taken by the booking platform who placed those people in the houses that we had. And I also had actually a person who was in their international warrant under search, but we had nothing to do with them. We just rented their property to them. We had not taken any participation in the crimes that those guys were a part of. Now, Personally, I think that if there would not be steps taken to prevent all this customer service mess that is Airbnb is trying to fix, there will be a significant chunk of market taken from Airbnb. Lots of people on the Facebook and on different forums are trying to boycott Airbnb. However, it's still one of the biggest players in the area. Definitely this issue has to be addressed. I think if it would not be addressed, the problem will just keep growing. And there's not much that people like Catherine Powell could do, because you just have to hire more qualified people and pay them. And the paradox is that Airbnb went public. Now investors want to see an income, and they cannot just increase the spending on things like customer service, and most probably the investors would not support that. So it's kind of a tricky situation for the founders and CEOs in the Airbnb decision makers. But I hope that they will be able to get out of this situation. For instance, Amazon customer support, or especially Amazon, they're like super picky about that. They try to hire really good trained companies who would be doing that customer support. For instance, on VRBO, most of the time when you call, they are really qualified and they know what they're talking about. As opposed to Airbnb, sometimes you can get the guy who was just hired 3 days ago. He was having a quick training, and pretty much he would probably don't know the policies or would not know what the steps to take. So that's a really big issue, guys. Anyways, hope this video was helpful, and if you have comments about this, make sure to leave it under this video. Have a good one. Bye.